Good day and welcome to video 22. Now today I will be starting a whole series on quadratics. Now there are many, if you've been to school and whatnot, right, you're going to realize that when you are solving quadratics, there are a lot of different methods out there to solve quadratics. So I sort of summarized it on the side here, right? Now, there are four basic ways I'll be covering on how to solve quadratics. The first way is using the factorization method. The second method will be using the quadratic formula. The third way will be expressing it in the form ax plus h squared plus k. And the fourth and final way that I'll be covering will be using graphs. All right, so let's get started with the first method here today. The first method I'm going to be covering is how to solve quadratics using the factorization method. Now, I know I briefly covered factorization, I believe, in video 18 or 19. So you might want to refresh your memory on how to solve on how to factorize quadratics by reviewing videos 18 and 19. All right, so let's get started. On the board here, we have a basic quadratic equation. How do we know it's a quadratic? Well, it's simple. There's an x squared, there's an x, and there's an item without x. Now, you may have remembered that a quadratic, the number touching x squared is a, the number touching x is b, and you notice I'm circling the sign because the minus sign belongs to the 11, and the number without x is c. Now, when you're solving a quadratic using the factorization method or any method, I would strongly advise that you put the whole equation equal to 0. Now, sometimes when you're given a quadratic, all the items will be on this side of the equal sign and the 0 will already be on the other side. If you're doing a quadratic and there are items on this side of the equal sign, what you need to do first is throw all the items on the other side of the equal sign, and don't forget to change the signs, and then summarize it by adding up all the x squareds, adding up all the x's, and then everything without x. Then identify A, B, and C. Now, this question is lined up perfectly. You have nothing to throw across on the other side. So we are going to factorize this quadratic, and then after I factorize, I am going to solve the quadratic. So let's begin. Let's quickly review what we did in videos 18 and 19. The first step in factorizing a quadratic is to multiply the a and the c value. Today, when we multiply a by c, we'll get 2 by 5, which is positive 10. Now, it's very important that we pay attention to the second. So, next in line, we ask ourselves, hey, what two numbers can we multiply to get positive 10? And if we were to add it, we would get the middle number, which is minus 11, which is b. So, two things come to mind. One, if I multiply 10 by 1, I will get 10. 10 multiplied by 1 is positive 10. But if I were to add 10 and 1, I will not get minus 11. 10 plus 1 will give us positive 11. I do not want positive 11. I am looking for negative 11. So, another combination we can use is minus 10 multiplied by minus 1. If we were to multiply minus 10 by minus 1, we would definitely get positive 10. And the nice thing about it, if we were to add minus 10 and minus 1, we would get minus 11. So here's what we're going to do now. We're going to take the 2x squared and put the 5x here. And then we're going to replace the middle term using these two numbers. Remember, minus 11x is the same exact thing as minus 10x minus 1x. I have not changed the value of the question. I have just replaced minus 11x with two numbers that if we were to add them back up, we would get back minus 10x. So the value of the question has not changed. What we're going to do next now, since we have 1, 2, 3, 4 items, we're going to pay attention to the first two items and we're going to factorize it. We can pull out 2 on an x and a 2 on an x. So if we pull out 2 and x, we would get x minus 5. Remember, when we're pulling out 2x, we're secretly visiting both items and dividing it by 2x. Over here now, we need to factorize something such that when we factorize it, we will get exactly x minus 5. So I'm going to pull out positive 1. If I pull out positive 1, that means I'm visiting both items here and dividing it by positive 1. Now, if we were to do that, we would get back minus 1x plus 5. Do these two items look exactly the same? No. Notice they're slightly different. The signs are different. So instead of pulling out positive 1, I strongly recommend you pull out negative 1. Remember, when you pull out a negative, the answer remains basically the same, except the signs become the opposite. So negative will change to a positive, and the positive will change to a negative. Now, 1x and x is the same, and we have minus 5 and minus 5. So both items look exactly the same. I do not need to put the 1 here, because if I erase the 1 will be understood in any case. So now both items look the same. Let us factorize out the same items. Remember, I keep saying this over and over in my factorization videos 18 and 19, that although both items appear twice, the x minus 5 appears here and it also appears here, so it appears twice. But when we factorize it out, whatever we are pulling out, we only write it once. So if we were to factorize this, we will get x minus 5. What will we be left with here? 2x and minus 1. So we have finished factorizing the quadratic. Remember, this whole quadratic was equal to 0. Now, at the beginning of the video, I said we would be solving quadratics. Factorizing quadratics and solving quadratics is not the same. If we are solving the quadratic using factorization, the first step is to factorize the quadratic, and using this answer, we will now solve the quadratic. Now, when you solve a quadratic, you usually get two answers. I'm going to show you how to get those two answers. Notice we have two pairs of brackets. All we have to do now is take each bracket. This bracket is x minus 5. So take the first bracket and put it equal to 0. Then we are going to take the item in the second bracket, which is 2x minus 1, and also put it equal to 0. So it comes like I divided the question into two parts. The first bracket, put it equal to 0. The second bracket, put it equal to 0. And all we have to do now is solve for x. In other words, get x on one side and everyone else on the other side. This one is going to be pretty straightforward. To solve for x, we throw across minus 5. We have 0 waiting. Minus 5 becomes positive 5. So we take the minus 5 and throw it across. 0 plus 5 is 5. So my first answer is x is equal to 5. Let's get our second answer by paying attention to the second half of the question. We're going to do the same exact thing here. we're going to try to get x on one side and everyone else on the other side. In other words, solve for x. So if we want to solve for x, the minus 1 is separated from the x. So we are going to throw across the minus 1 first. When you throw across minus 1, we're going to get positive 1. We all know 0 plus 1 is still 1. Now we need to get x alone on one side. We need to get rid of this 2. Remember, when a number touches a letter, there's a secret multiply. And when you throw across a multiply, you're going to get a divide, but the sign does not change, which means this 2 is positive. So when we throw him across, the multiply will change to a divide, but he will remain positive. So let's finish off this question. X is equal, 0 plus 1 is 1. The 2 is a multiply, throw it across, you're going to get a divide. But remember, the 2 was positive here. So when he goes on the other side, it still remains a positive. Our second answer is x is equal to a half. Now, some people like fractions and some people like decimals. So instead of writing a half, some people might put 0.5. That's also 100% correct. So now we have solved the quadratic using the factorization method. And we got 2 answers. If anybody were to ask you, hey, what were the 2 answers you got for this quadratic? You would simply say x is 5 and x is 0.5. Let's try a harder example, right? All right, let's see. Keep in mind that I'm going to be saying over and over that your quadratic must be equal to 0 in order to solve it. So if you do not have 0 on the other side, pause and think a little bit on how you can get 0 on one side. So in this question, I plan to trick you with this equal to 0 item. Let's see. Right, we're going to have more than one tricks in this question. We have 3 minus 3x minus 2x squared is equal to minus 2. First of all, this is a quadratic because at first glance, you see an x squared, an x, and something without x. But what's the problem here? On this side, it's not equal to 0. So if I ask you to solve this quadratic, you're going to have to take care of this little problem here. I need this side to be equal to 0. So before I start the question, I will throw across the minus 2 to get positive 2. So this minus 2, grab it, throw it across, and it will become positive 2. Now, I'm going to throw it quite here because I know he doesn't have a letter and he doesn't have a letter. So I can add the 3 and the 2 and summarize it to get 5. Now, you are not allowed to pull out A, B, and C unless this side is equal to 0. So, let me summarize this first. Now, I have 3 plus 2 is 5. Minus 3x minus 2x squared is now equal to 0 because I got rid of the minus 2. Now, whenever I have a quadratic, I always like my A to come first, my B to come second, and my C to come third. Over here, if you notice, some students will make a mistake and say A is 5, B is minus 3, and C is minus 2. That will be completely wrong. A does not necessarily have to come first, B does not necessarily have to come second, and C does not necessarily have to come third. What determines A, B, and C is who's touching the x squared, the x, and has no x touching it. The number touching x squared is A, the number touching x is B, and everything else is C. So I usually like to rearrange my quadratic so A always comes first, B always comes second, and C comes third. So I'm just going to slide this over here put him in the middle, and 5 to the end. Keep in mind that this 5 is positive. So let's put the minus 2x squared first, the minus 3x second, and the 5 last. Now remember, if I had just put the 5 here and I did not put a sign here, it will be interpreted as what? Multiply. We do not want it to be interpreted as a multiply. So this 5 was positive, so make sure and put the positive. Let's identify A, B, and C now. Let's circle it. A is minus 2, B is minus 3, and C is 5. Now, it's very important that I put the quadratic equal to 0 if I am solving a quadratic. Why am I specifying that you must put it equal to 0 over and over and over? Will become clear when we reach the fourth method, the graphs. Okay. Even if you don't put it equal to 0 and you were to solve the quadratic, you will get these correct answers. But I personally would minus some marks from you if I were marked graded an exam if you did not put it equal to 0. Putting it equals to 0 tells me that you fully understand quadratics. And I will clear this up, like I said, when I reach item 4 using the graphs method. So let's factorize this quadratic. By now you should be very, very, very familiar with factorizing quadratics. The first step is to multiply A and C. So let's multiply A and C. I believe we will get minus 2 by 5, which is minus 10. What two numbers if we were what two numbers if we were to multiply it? We will get minus 10, and if we were to add them, we will get minus 3. I believe that would be minus 5 multiplied by positive 2. Let's just test this to make sure. Minus 5 by 2 is minus 10, and minus 5 plus 2 is minus 3. So we have 2x squared, and we have positive 5 here. These are these two guys here. The minus 3x, we can throw it away and replace it with minus 5x plus 2x. This is the same exact thing as minus 3x. Remember to write in the x. When you're looking over here, there will not be an x. So when you're writing it in here, make sure to put back the x. Let's factorize this quickly. From the first one, from the first one, what we can pull out here is minus 1. If we were to pull out minus 1, remember, if we're dividing by 1, our values will not change. But since we're dividing by minus 1, our signs will become the opposite. So I believe we will get positive 2x squared, positive 5x. I think I made a slight mistake here. I think I could have pulled out minus 1x. If we pull out minus 1x, we will get 2x and just the 5, because we're secretly dividing everyone by minus 1x. And remember, when you divide a negative and a negative, you will get a positive. When you divide a negative and a negative, you will get a positive. In the second item, I don't think there's anything we can pull out. So whenever there's no common factor between the two, just pull out 1. And we all know when we pull out or divide by 1, our values will not change. We'll get the same exact item. This looks exactly the same, and this looks exactly the same. Let's factorize it out. If we were to factorize it out, remember we're pulling this out, so we only write it once. We will be left with minus 1x plus 1. Now that we have finished factorizing it, sorry, I forgot to put the equal to 0, super important. We're going to split the question in half. We're going to take the first half of the question and put it equal to 0. Now we're going to take the second half of the question and also put it equal to 0. And in each case, we're going to solve for x. So We're going to get x on one side and everyone else on the other side. To solve for x, we will have to throw across the positive 5 to get minus 5 and then divide by 2. Which means we will end up with minus 5 divided by positive 2. Because when you throw across or multiply, the sign does not change. So minus 5 divided by 2 on your calculator will be minus 2.5. That's our first answer for the quadratic. Let's try the second one. We're going to throw across the positive 1. When we throw across positive 1, we will get minus 1. We all know 0 minus 1 is minus 1. And then we will throw across the minus 1, which is a secret multiply because it's touching the letter. When you throw across the multiply, you're going to get a divide, but the sign will not change. So our question will look like, our answer will look like this, sorry. 0 minus 1 is minus 1. The multiply changes to a divide, and the minus 1 goes underneath. That's this minus 1. Well, minus divided by minus is a plus. 1 divided by 1 is 1. Our two answers are x equals to minus 2.5 and x is equal to 1. Great. So, I hope this helped you to understand how to solve a quadratic using the factorization method. In the next video, I'll be using the quadratic formula. And it's very important to note that any method you use here, you will get the same exact answer. Alright, so until my next video, don't forget to subscribe. You can also check the link below for the website below for more details. Of course, don't forget to leave comments. Have a great day.